But I was especially enjoying this 1 o'clock window on the East Coast, 10 o'clock on the West Coast. On paper, we had two of the best games, I thought, of the year. Would they deliver? Oh, yes, they would. Let's start in Minnesota.
So here we go. One play separates the Lions from first place after all that. Darnold's going to work out of the gun. Final play of the game, barring a penalty. Darnold takes the snap. Back, looking, rush comes. Darnold hit. Darnold down. This game is over. Trevor Nowatzki with the sack. Your Detroit Lions are in first place. Oh, Trevor Nowatzki, big play, my man, in a game full of them.
Trevor Nowatzki. Hadn't heard of that young man before Sunday, but I have heard of Dan Miller, WXYT. It was a defensive play that finished off a 31-29 victory by the Detroit Lions, a game that featured a little bit of everything, some great rushing, some great quarterbacking, yes, some big-time defensive plays, great catches by some of the best receivers in the game, and a great ending authored, Patrick Claybon, by Jared Goff.
Jared Goff almost did it again, Greg. Almost did it again. I'm looking at the stat sheet. We're calling the game on Game Day Live, 19 of 19 in the third quarter. And I'm like, when we come back, we'll see if Jared Goff keeps his perfect game going. You can put that on me, Lions fans, because the very next pass got tipped at the line of scrimmage and knocked out. But that's the type of day it was. The Minnesota Vikings could not get off of the field. We talked all week, especially me. I'm hyping up the Brian Flores defense because they have been an issue for everybody in the league. They blitzed on a season high 55.2% of Jared Goff's dropbacks.
Woo, that's high.
On those dropbacks, he was 13 of 15 for 163 and a touchdown.
Wow.
Jared Goff, laser-like right now. And there was a spot for criticism towards the end of the game. Dan Campbell, there's a minute and 13 seconds left. They are in field goal range, and Dan Campbell elects to kneel it out and have the kick be not the final play of the game, because there were still going to be 15 seconds on the clock afterwards. But he sends Bates out there, has faith in Bates, who after the game was talking about, you know, I'm looking for jobs. I'm on Indeed. Like I'm working at car dealerships. I didn't know I would be here answering questions. He puts that thing in the back of the net and the Lions win. But a dicey end of game situation. But how much Dan Campbell could we possibly be other than having faith in Bates?
Yes.
And then in a Hail Mary situation, watching what the Buffalo Bills did against Aaron Rodgers and saying, no, I'm Dan Campbell. Aaron, send the house.
Yeah.
Send 5.
Yeah, that was amazing by Flores. The strategy, we'll get to that in a second. And you mentioned Bates, who was training to be a brick salesman, because you don't just become a brick salesman. You got to build that, education brick by brick to get there. Let's listen to Dan Campbell after the game.
Just a great team win, complimentary football across the board, offense, defense, special teams when we need it most, and really proud of these guys. That's a huge win on the road, tough environment, first one, and you don't want to say must win, but we needed that in a bad way.
Interesting wording there, that they needed it in a bad way. Maybe he's thinking about how that game was going. They lost Aiden Hutchinson, though. That was an emotional loss, and they were trailing in this game 10-0 early. Then you get a 28-17 lead entering the fourth quarter. You give up the lead, and so maybe that's how he was feeling. That would have been a really heartbreaking loss, but no. Goff drives him down at the end, and too much faith in Jake Bates there, who's been a little up and down this year, and you would have liked it to just finish the game out the way their offense was playing, but you don't get criticized too much if you win. It's interesting on the other side that they were setting up for a potential long field goal, and they got a penalty before that last play we just listened to from Dan Miller. It would have been a 68-yard field goal attempt for, how do you say his name? Will Reichard?
Reichard.
Reichard is awesome. Reichard is one of the best kickers in the league right off the bat. And they say he's got that distance to go 68, that he's hit 70. They thought 73 was too much. So that strategy by Campbell almost, came back to haunt them. Sam Darnold just took too much time on the play before. But Nick, the thing I'll take away from this game is what Patrick, of course, led with, because he's such a talented broadcaster. He knows to go right to the nuts of it
all.
I'll
just understeal.
It's Goff. It's Goff outsmarting Flores. Goff and Ben Johnson for the third straight time saying, whatever you're throwing at us, it's not going to work. The old idea of that you can blitz Goff into submission, that's not going to work. And his numbers under pressure were really good too, because they did get plenty of pressure, and he made it happen with a number of really nice throws and good decisions.
Yeah, let's not overlook the fact that he plays behind one of the better offensive lines in the NFL as well. And it was very clear on what I thought was his best decision of the day, the touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown down the middle, where he looks left. The blitz is in his face. They've sent like 5 or 6 guys, and they all run into just a brick wall of an offensive line. He looks left, resets, sees him down the seam, and then puts the ball perfectly on him. That's who Jared Goff is right now, and when he has time to throw and when he's comfortable, and that's why we're seeing these peak results. And make no mistake, they needed every single one of those completions in this game because this was an all-out war. You go from being down 10-0 to then all of a sudden you're up 14-10. Then you lose the lead again in the second half. You're on the road. The place is loud. They're blaring that obnoxious horn. And you need a win over your division rival to move into first place. I totally see why Dan Campbell said it was a win that they needed. I mean, they don't need a turning point, but this was a statement win. And they came off a blowout last week. Not all of them are going to be blowouts. This is a real test, and they passed.
Yeah, Patrick, tell me how the Detroit defense looked, because, look, the Vikings get their first touchdown after a fake punt fail by Minnesota, and then they hit him for a quick, long run by Aaron Jones, who is back for this game, who really helps out their offense. And they get another touchdown on the Ivan Pace fumble return with about 6 minutes to go, which really felt like it swung the whole game. But offensively, that means they only allowed one other touchdown, the Lions. Like, what was it when Minnesota had the ball? Like, what did you see?
Minnesota was a lot of Justin Jefferson had 7 catches on 7 targets for 81 yards. I mean, 8 targets because that one towards the end was kind of, didn't know Sam Darnold was looking for Jordan Addison or Justin Jefferson. It was one of those high throws from Darnold. But this defense continues to really be without, and we've only seen, this is the first game without Aiden Hutchinson. Wait for Brian Branch to make a play. And it's almost since his very first game in the NFL where he picks off Patrick Mahomes, where you've seen guys kind of running the wrong way. Carlton Davis had a punch out that got called back ultimately, but Brian Branch consistently in the right spot. Terrion Arnold didn't have a lot of those pass interference calls that he had all season, but essentially this team, 32 is the playmaker, and everybody else, they played a lot of man today. It was 10.5% higher than at this point last season. A lot of man against the Minnesota Vikings, which is tough to do considering Justin Jefferson has 1,000 yards in his career.
Right.
In just 8 games against this Detroit Lions team.
And Jahmyr Gibbs pops off for a couple long runs. He's been waiting to have some long runs this season. And he ends up going 15 for 116 and 2 touchdowns. But just a good football game. And now the onus is sort of on Minnesota. They lost this game, but it just sets up all these NFC North matchups at the top of this division are going to be so good. I was going to say the Vikings are now going to have to win in Detroit, and like maybe that's true, but Green Bay's in this race, and Chicago's in this race. Like, who knows what are going to be the big games at the end of the season.